everybody, Jason Bermas here. We got a great show lined up for you today. We talked a little bit via Deep in the Weeds on WQUD of secret societies on the Halloween episode this Friday. So we talked Skull and Bones, Bohemian Grove, and much more. You're not going to want to miss it. Buckle up and get ready to make sense of the madness.
Deep in the Weeds with Jason Bermas on AZ in the morning.
Yes, we are going Deep in the Weeds with Jason Bermas, brought to you by River Cities Reader. Happy Halloween, everybody. Happy Halloween. Jason Bermas, what's going on, buddy?
You know, it is that time of the year. It's time to get a little spooky. This is actually usually my favorite holiday, and it is landing on a Friday, so it's not just the kids and a Halloween weekend. We should see a lot of fun adult stuff. But because it's Halloween, I thought that this would be a good time to talk about some of the real spooky aspects of what I would call the predator class leadership and their odd occultic behaviors, Aaron.
Yes, I'm interested. Like, we're talking like Freemason, Skull and Bones, like that type of stuff?
Well, I mean, the Masonry, that gets a bit controversial with folks, right? There are some people that are very hardened in the idea of the first three levels of Masonry, which is the Scottish Rite. I actually visited the George Washington Masonic Memorial while I was over in D.C., and there are many 32nd and 33rd degree Masons that have made their way not only into United States politics, but all the way up to the presidency of the United States.
What's that mean?
Well,
What's
again,
the degree?
since
What is that?
yeah, since there's only 3 degrees and you become a master Mason, in most of these regards, there are offshoots, right? There are all these little organizations and other sects of Masonry. And they say that there's, the 33rd degree is the highest degree you can possibly join from any of these lodges. That's a bit controversial in itself. And the relationship between Lucifer and the Masons is a controversial one in itself. It is said that at the highest levels of Masonry, Lucifer, the light bearer, ends up being the good guy. And the guy in the Bible, in the Garden of Eden, for instance, is the bad guy because it is Lucifer that is offering knowledge and breaking the chains of ignorance for humanity. Now, I'm not saying I buy into any of this, but it certainly is out there. And, there are Masons that are pretty adamant against that, but then there are other Masons I've known that have actually left Masonry because they have witnessed some of the, let's just say, less than savory behavior of what are known as the Black Lodges of Masonry. But even beyond Masonry, even though a lot of that symbolism and ritualistic behavior is utilized, are these sects that were in the United States post-Revolutionary War and really what end up setting up our modern-day intelligence systems, which makes them, to me, even more important. And especially the Skull and Bones Society out of Yale, which is founded all the way back in 1832. So,
both Bushes, right? Both Bush presidents were in there. There's quite a few famous people. Cheney, maybe?
Cheney, I do not believe, is a Bonesman. I don't think he's Yale. Now, there are other societies within these elitist institutions, such as Scroll and Key, Book and Snake. But the big daddy really is Skull and Bones. And yes, both Bushes are members of that. John Kerry, also a member of Skull and Bones. William Taft, who was president, was a member of Skull and Bones. Really, you go down the line, and there are a ton of these bonesmen that have made a significant splash in the geopolitical arena. But there's a book out there, or not a book, a film out there that was actually directed by De Niro. De Niro's in it a little bit, but it's a Matt Damon picture. It's called The Good Shepherd. And the real significance of Skull and Bones, other than the fact that their occultic rituals are super weird, and they do kind of tap into that on the peripheral in The Good Shepherd. For instance, it's more than alluded to, for instance, when they tap Matt Damon. A lot of people go, oh, well, it's a fraternity. Well, they don't get you as a freshman or even a sophomore, like you usually get tapped for a fraternity, right? Usually those are the ones that are rushing. They're in the fraternity for years, and then they graduate. You don't get tapped until you are I believe it's a second semester junior. So basically, you go through one semester of these rituals, if you will, and then you only have 1 year in college because it's really meant to go well beyond college. And some of those unsavory things that they do show you in there is number one, when Damon is tapped, he's dressed like a woman. There's a lot of, for instance, later on when these guys are older and they go to the Bohemian Grove, these are men's clubs. So when they do plays or they sing songs, which is a big part of this thing, they dress up like in drag. I often yes, exactly, dog.
Dog, yeah, go ahead. I'll shut the mic off for a minute and get quiet.
That's fine. So, for instance, I often wonder with J. Edgar Hoover, for instance, whether or not some of those things that came out were from the Bohemian Grove Club. I have a lot of the Bohemian Grove annals, and it's rife with very, very important, rich, and influential people dressed in drag. So he's tapped while he's in drag, and then while they're getting into this club, they're dressed up in the Skull and Bones outfits. In other words, dressed up like a skeleton. They have a coffin in the middle of the room. In one of the scenes, it's portrayed as one of the members peeing on the person in the coffin from an upper barrier.
Gross for everyone.
I mean, just a fun time for all. The significance of the coffin, actually, again, if you believe the whistleblowers from the inside, is that they are made to sit in that coffin and then confess to all of their sexual activity up until that point. A lot of people think that this is like the blackmail aspects. But the truth of the matter is, if you watch The Good Shepherd, it's how this group that would get together also at Deer Island after they're in Skull and Bones becomes the Central Intelligence Agency and the OSS, because that's absolutely true.
What?
Skull and Bones is the precursor to modern day intelligence, and it was through this Yale network and Deer Island that they tapped in from the OSS into the Central Intelligence Agency. And a lot of these guys were Yaleys. It's just a fact, because they were running the initial intelligence operations. In fact, one of the tales of how even powerful they were at the time was that they got the skull of Geronimo, the famous Native American warrior and leader. And their family, the Geronimo estate, ended up suing Skull and Bones for that skull, which they had in what is known as the tomb. And one of the rituals that they were actually caught doing, and I have it in my film, Invisible Empire and New World Order Defined. Essentially, I think it was Anthony Sutton who had written a really extensive book on Skull and Bones and how it was important within these intelligence networks and beyond. He got on the roof and they filmed some of the rituals outside, and they have this one where they're doing a mock human sacrifice of what appears to be a young girl, and they're saying the devil equals death and death equals the devil, and there's a bunch of screaming. It's just one of those things where you see the vast majority of the people that are coming out of Skull and Bones. You mentioned the Bushes. They all portray themselves as these Christian conservatives, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, while they were coming into their own as adults, they're part of these networks that are heavily into the occult. And then when they're later on in life and they're taking part in things like the Bohemian Grove, I mean, that's yet another place where they have these very odd occultic rituals. And as I stated before, also the cross-dressing. And it
for everyone. For real. Like, this is weird, man. I guess I didn't know some of, I guess I've never paid that much attention. I knew, like, the Bushes were in the Skull and Bones thing. I knew, like, Washington was a Mason. Freemasonry was a lot more popular back in the, like, revolutionary times, and probably, I don't know, maybe it still is, and I'm just not aware of it. but I know Washington wasn't like super religious either way. He kind of used that as a political move, like a chess game almost. But this is like kind of nasty, bro. Like I'm, I guess I didn't realize they were that far into some of this stuff. I feel like I'm watching Eyes Wide Shut, listening to you talk.
Well, it is kind of like Eyes Wide Shut. In fact, when I was in studio, I showed you that Eyes Wide Shut-esque party from the Rothschilds. And again, that network heavily invested in these type of organizations and the people that attend them. The Bohemian Grove is another one that comes out of this same kind of time period in the late 1800s. And it's a group of like artisans and political figures that is essentially taken over by the Western elite. And today, it's a pretty exclusive club. There's about 3,000 members. Back then, you were talking about several hundred. But it's the movers and the shakers, man. And one of the things that's bothered me about this Trump administration is that a lot of people who think that they've woken up and Trump's fighting the deep state and this and that. There are a lot of people that have attended the Bohemian Grove recently that it should raise eyebrows. For instance, James O'Keefe, the founder of Project Veritas and the guy behind O'Keefe Media Group. Look, I like James. I think he's done some really great work. At the same time, going to the Bohemian Grove with these elitists, that raises some alarm bells. Even Clarence Thomas, one of the things that was in that ProPublica article that was trying to take him down maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, was the fact that he was going to the Bohemian Grove. I'm not even sure that he was a member. He may have been a guest. That's another thing, is that these big-time members and families, for instance, they have these little encampments out there. The Hillbilly camp is the Bush camp, by the way. And they'll bring in friends and guests that aren't necessarily members, but maybe members one day. For instance, they actually brought in the guy that challenged the tank at Tiananmen Square in China. He was a guest one year. Clint Eastwood is actually a member of the Bohemian Grove and has attended quite a bit. Kid Rock recently attended the Bohemian Grove.
Come on, Kid Rock can show up at any party. I mean, right? Right? I mean, he's always hanging out down at his bar. Mm-hmm. The guy lives in like a super modified, pimped out double wide trailer. I got a feeling you invite Kid Rock to a party like that, he's going to show up. Now, Bohemian Grove is in California. I don't know if we mentioned that.
No.
And it dates all the way back to 1872.
Yes.
So is this kind of like, it's like the California version of Skull and Bones a little bit?
It's the grown-up version. Like I was talking about before, if you watch The Good Shepherd, they mentioned Deer Island. And Deer Island is still around, and yes, they very much Blue Bloods, Yale, some other people. But with the Bohemian Grove, it's a wider berth, if you will, but it is largely Republican. So, for instance, Nixon and Reagan are famously seen together at the Bohemian Grove. I think before Reagan is president. I think it might be during the time period that Nixon is actually president. Nixon, if you ever heard the Nixon tapes on Bohemian Grove, I will not repeat what he says, but I'm sure that people will find it interesting. And it is a quote that we have in Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined. But he was not a big fan of it. Kissinger seemed to be a much bigger fan of it. To speak to the importance of Bohemian Grove, okay, you have the fact that, these organizations in the college level get into the Central Intelligence Agency and how that is formed. The Manhattan Project was actually launched through the Bohemian Grove. So the nuclear bomb project and much more was realized at the club, which is in San Francisco, and then later talks at the Grove in Sonoma is where that took place. And obviously that's a pivotal point, not only in American history, but global history.
Yeah, human history. So they get all messed up at this campground and start talking crazy, and then some of it sticks, and then it turns into a nuclear bomb. I mean, am I synopsizing correctly? I mean, that's kind of, just trying to summarize what you're saying here. We are Deep in the Weeds with Jason Bermas, brought to you by River City's Reader. Next question, Jason Bermas, have you been there?
I've actually been outside the Bohemian Club in San Francisco. I have just a couple of B-roll shots, again, in Invisible Empire. One of the outer brick wall with the owl, which is their mascot and their deity, according to their own annals. And then when you walk into the lobby, there's a glass door on the outside so you can see it. And they've got about, I don't know, it looks like a 6 to 8 foot golden owl statue that is also in the film. It is the club where they initially recruit Oppenheimer for the Manhattan Project, but it's talks within the Grove after the fact, after they have their scientists, that really lead to the project. So, Lord knows what they say and do at the club and over in the Grove, but they do kick it off with a ritual, which they call a play, but it's every year, and it's called the Cremation of Care. And they dress up in these robes. They sacrifice a effigy of a human or a baby, depending on the year, that represents dull care. In other words, they're conscious and all the bad things that they've done. And it's a big party after they've sacrificed that, because it's time to forget all that stuff and do it all again. And one of the other things that you'll see strewn throughout the club, the Grove, but is also at the club, is the saying, "Weaving spiders come not here." And essentially that's kind of like the mafia code, that come on in, have a good time, be with the club, work towards the club's goals. Whatever you do, you don't talk about what actually goes on here, and you protect each other.
It's like Fight Club.
I mean,
rule of Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club. I just Googled Bohemian Grove, and it took me to Wikipedia. And literally the first picture they show, summer 1967 at Owl's Nest Camp. Seated left to right, Preston Hotchkiss, Ronald Reagan, Harvey Hancock, Richard Nixon, Glenn T. Seaberg, Jack Sparks, Kevin Winter, unidentified individual, and then Edwin W. Pauley. So some heavy hitters. And this is the first picture they show.
Yeah, even mainstream sites like Wikipedia have to admit the political significance of the Grove, because it's been embedded in history. However, I didn't watch the Oppenheimer movie, but one of the reasons I really didn't watch it is because I had a hard time believing that they were going to talk about things like the Grove, which were extremely important. And when I brought that up with friends, they didn't know what the S71 Club was, or S71 group. That's the group within the club that started it. And they were just kind of surprised. They're like, "Oh, no, that's not in there." And I'm like, "Huh, weird." And really, it's not just the Bohemian Grove and the nuclear project. If you look at Jack Parsons and JPL, Jet Propulsion's laboratory, NASA, heavily into the occult. I mean, these people, in a lot of ways, very much believed in a lot of ritualistic behavior, and even what some people would call alchemy. So when you see these top-level scientists also integrating this quote-unquote ancient knowledge and ancient behavior, because the occult really just means hidden knowledge, you have to ask yourself why. Even Oppenheimer has that famous quote after the first bomb is launched successfully, and he quotes the Bhagavad Gita, and he talks about becoming death itself, right? So in a lot of ways, these people are very morbid, and what a day to talk about that morbidity by Halloween.
Halloween. Actually, I was talking about the history of Halloween earlier, and how it came from Irish and Celtic ancestors, and kind of what all that looks like. I'm scrolling down here on the Wikipedia. They talk about in 2000. Did you know Alex Jones and his cameraman Mike Hansen entered the Grove and shot footage of the cremation of care ceremony?
Oh, Alex and I have had talks about it for sure. It's one of the things that I found out about Alex. It's in his movie 9/11: The Road to Tyranny, or although he did another one called Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove. But in Road to Tyranny, they put that section there, and that was a game changer for me, right? I had never heard of the Grove. At this time, I was in my early 20s. The internet was brand new. And that's why I have great respect for people, not only like Alex Jones, but people like David Icke. That I don't believe in shape-shifting lizard people or the Anunnaki running the show, but Icke was one of those first people to really shine the light of the occultic behavior of these individuals. And Icke will be coming on my show soon. He's got a new book coming out.
Right?
Yeah, I like David a lot, and I'm sure that we're going to be having a conversation of where we're at and where all this fits in. Because another really chilling aspect of all this is that, I was talking about JPL and our technology. If you look at even something like the Large Hadron Collider, it is built in this manner that seems to be driven towards the occult and occult symbolism. And we constantly see these symbols utilized. Hell, the Skull and Bones logo alone is absolutely legendary. And, eventually it's kind of taken on a pop culture significance that's outside of what it was being utilized for with these people. And I think that we need to be more and more aware of those things, that symbols have meaning, just like words have meaning. And a lot of these things, these symbols, if you will, are embedded and hidden for a reason. It's kind of the language for these folks. You talked about masonry. And masonry, you have these different types of handshakes and gestures. A lot of people talk about the hand in the jacket, etc. And this is these people communicating with each other and letting each other know that they're part of the club.
We've got like masonry symbolism on the top of the building right here in town, top of the building that the post office is in. And then there's another building right down the street that also at the top has some weird masonry type stuff going on. It's like K of P, and then it's got a weird symbol.
Well, again, you're talking about the political significance of masonry. Remember, they were actually a political party in this country, the Masons and the anti-Masons at one point. You talked about George Washington, right? You walk into that George Washington Masonic Memorial, and there are just these large-scale paintings of him with the compass and the square and the Mason's trowel and, putting down the quote-unquote cornerstones. That's where that terminology of a cornerstone comes from, is from Masonry. And I haven't looked into it, but I wouldn't be shocked if there's some type of Masonic cornerstone in this new ballroom that everybody is all jazzed up about, and I couldn't give two rats' asses about. But who knows? We'll find out. Maybe we'll get. It's,
the most hilarious part of that is like, if you're the Secret Service, how the hell do you keep security when you just ripped half the damn house down? You know what I mean? Like, hey, let's get some bulletproof tarps in here, guys. I don't know. I'm like, what? You just ripped half the house out. Like, there's no walls there. And it's going to take a minute to rebuild that. Like, I was like, from a safety standpoint or a security standpoint, they just shot that to hell.
There's so much security down in D.C. The snipers are on the roof. The Secret Service is embedded everywhere. I would assume that the parks that surround the White House are also embedded with Secret Service, law enforcement, et cetera, that are not announced. I think the last thing that the president has to worry about is security within the White House. But who knows? You never know. We're living in a weird time.
They've almost got him a couple times, Jason.
Yeah, but that was in Butler and Florida. They haven't got him in D.C. yet.
The guy down in Florida still cracks me up where he was like, I wasn't going to try to kill him. I just, set this machine gun up in the fence for, good times. Because he pleaded not guilty or whatever. I'm like, really? How do you plead not guilty to that? There's actually a picture of you with a freaking machine gun pointed through the fence towards the golf course. Like, okay. Anyway.
I mean, not only did he defend himself, but after the verdict of guilty, and again, no cameras in the courtroom. I really think that at the very least, those trials should be fully filmed and made available after the fact if they're not going to let the public watch them in the beginning. But he tried to stab himself after the verdict, apparently with a pen in the neck. Now, I've
Yeah,
only
in the courtroom.
in the courtroom. I've only read the reports. I wonder to myself why that guy was let anywhere near any sharp objects. Right? I mean,
Well,
it's not like even if he's defending himself, what you can't give him an iPad. You can't just use that. Like again, it's going to be harder for him to bludgeon somebody or himself with that than stab himself with a pen or a pencil to make notes. So very bizarre.
so the pen was rubbery though. It was made for that reason. All the pens in that courtroom were not hard; they were rubbery, and so he didn't hurt himself. He tried. What I wondered with that was, I mean, with an iPad, you just smash it, grab the glass, and cut yourself, right? But what I wondered on that was why.
Yeah, no, obviously.
Hired him. Who is he afraid of that he would rather stab himself in the neck with a pen in the courtroom than face whoever he's going to have to face whenever he gets out of jail for not doing what he was supposed to do?
It certainly is bizarre behavior. And you know what? Since we're talking about political assassinations, that's probably a good segue into some of the new stuff that came out in the investigation of the Charlie Kirk murder. It was being reported this week that the DNI, the Department of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard's unit, particularly somebody named Joe Kent, was looking into the idea of a foreign government, most likely Israel, possibly being involved in Kirk's murder. And it's being reported all over the place that Kash Patel not only shut this down, but screamed at Tulsi about it. And remember, at one point, very shortly after the event, Patel and the FBI came out and said, we're looking at all possible angles. We're looking at this. We're looking at that. And it seems like, no, actually, they were doing the opposite. And they were very angry when other people started looking into the event.
Well, we seem to do everything. As a country, the U.S. seems to do everything it can to help, protect, and keep upright Israel, no matter what. And a lot of people wonder why.
Well, I mean, Aaron, I wish that I had better news on that front, because I think that this whole ceasefire and the idea that there's peace there now is nothing but a facade. It doesn't seem like that ceasefire is real at all. I think that we're going to be into heavy combat scenarios more than likely within a month or two again. There is no plan really for what is going to happen to the people in Gaza. Netanyahu still seems hell-bent on the total and complete annexation of that area, and Trump constantly has to respond to that. And in fact, J.D. Vance, I believe, spoke at a TP USA event recently, and he was asked straight up some really great questions. Number one, about Palantir's data collection. Of course, J.D. Vance has close ties to Peter Thiel, who heads up Palantir. But he was also asked straight up whether or not Israel controls Donald Trump. And I don't necessarily think that Israel controls, quote unquote, Donald Trump, but I certainly don't know that Donald Trump can do anything about Israel's choice in their own domestic policy there. And with that regard, how much influence does this foreign government have over the United States in total?
And that's the question a lot of people are asking. We are deep in the weeds with Jason Bermas, brought to you by River City's Reader. There's a theory that, hey, they own all the banks, or they have a large controlling hand in global banking. That's one I've heard a lot. There's other things with, people believe, some of what we were talking about earlier, like the secret club stuff, and that Israelis have, or Jewish, however you want to put it, have a large hand in some of that, because those still go on, and they control people who control the country. But I mean, I don't know. The theory that makes the most sense, I guess, is the money thing, because money, and it kind of seems to rule the world or run it or whatever, money and power. But it's kind of dumbfounding sometimes, where you're like, why are we doing this? And we even go to bat for them when they're doing shady stuff and stuff that's like look away type stuff. Like, I don't even want to know, kind of things, like starving children on the Gaza Strip. Like, it's crazy.
It is pretty crazy that conflicts like that are allowed to take place in 2025 anywhere in the entire world, especially in a place that's supposed to be allied with us. I think it's way more nuanced than just the money aspect. I think that you have interests, even outside of Israel that back it. That yes, are in the banking industry, but they've also set up really a lot of different technological companies, medical companies within Israel. So you have that economic aspect. And then when you look at the military aspect, well, the United States has bases in Israel. It's a quote unquote ally against some of the surrounding regions. So it's almost like the United States base in that region. And then, you can get it. I talked a little bit about the technology, but that shared technology with the defense. It was Jonathan Pollard, who was a naval nuclear submarine technician that was caught giving information to Israel. And from, nuclear technology, which they got from us, to spy technology, such as Promise or Carnivore, to the Stingray apparatuses they have, they're into spying, espionage, blackmail, the whole nine, and they're very, very good at it. And they go beyond the United States. They look at it as these things as global targets, and I think that's also a big part of it. John Kiriakou of the CIA recently, when he was at that 9/11 event that I hosted, really broke down so many of the aspects of how active Israeli intelligence is, whether it's the Mossad or Unit 802 or the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. They are very, quote unquote, proactive. They are extremely ruthless. They try to recruit as many people as possible on as many levels as possible. And I just don't think that the average American citizen is really aware of that because of I guess the small nature of their size. I mean, what is it, like 6 million people in Israel? It might be up to 9 million. I don't think it breaks double digits.
Yeah, it's not much.
Yeah, it's not many. I mean, Iowa here, we got about 3 million folks. So, how much do we get paid attention to? Not too much.
No, not at all. I was going to ask, so Mike, you're old. Right. Like back in the 60s, 70s, what was kind of the mindset on Israel? Like, was it still like this where we felt like, is Israel kind of running stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it was like
Give Mike a break. He has had some pickle pepper beer here.
I'm just trying to get the right names back in the history, but with the Suez Canal and then there's a war, like in '67, and Israel kind of all came about in the early '40s, right? After World War II, and they needed the land, but Anwar Sadat, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's been peace agreements before,
sure,
but it hasn't been with the radical groups like Hamas or anything. It's more between Egypt and Israel.
Right, but I mean, was there a feel then, like back in the day, where you felt like Israel kind of had a hand in running the U.S. or had some sort of?
I didn't pay that much attention back then. I was. Well,
it was the '70s, man. I
know, but there was always a feeling that they were our ally, and that's the way. Since I've grown up, Israel's always been our ally.
Mm-hmm.
They help us, we help them.
Mm-hmm. Do they help us?
Well, supposedly that's usually the way friends are supposed to do it.
Well, I understand that, but I'm saying that maybe they do on the intelligence level if they're very proactive, like Jason's talking about, in the clandestine type, spook type stuff.
Right.
Maybe that's where we get a lot of our information, and so then we constantly cover them. I mean,
do we have any military bases in Israel? I mean, we've got.
Sure, we do. I don't know.
It's like a footprint in that part of the world.
Do you feel like, Jason, that a lot of the stuff with him too is sort of behind the curtain, like where it feels like it's not very transparent?
No, I think that the motto is by way of deception we do war. and they've been extremely good at that over their entire existence, and they're very, very good at manipulating public sentiment in many regions, especially the United States. And because we are viewed as the global military superpower, that goes a long way. I think periodically things get so out of control and so brutal and so violent, people start taking notice, and it transcends political lines. The left traditionally has been more anti-war, in my opinion, more pro-Palestinian. However, I think that with this new administration, with this new Republican Party and the Trump MAGA idea, there are so many people that jumped on that train because they're anti-war no matter what. And maybe they weren't aware of the nuances of what was going on. But now with social media, a lot of people, and I don't use the talk, but I hear a lot that there's some things on TikTok you're not seeing anywhere else. And I can tell you that, you talked about those starving children. I've seen some pretty brutal and grotesque things in my X feed. And I think that those type of images are what really swayed people to denounce the Vietnam War. Because in the 70s, they were broadcasting a lot of 18, 19, 21, 22-year-old soldiers that weren't making it, that were bloody, et cetera. And that turned people against the war. So just like that on social, and that's another reason that Israel is heavy in the digital units and very openly talks about that as well. The Unit 802 is their digital bot army and beyond. And Netanyahu, constantly is talking about the importance of influencers and the online battlefield.
Well, I mean, he's just trying to battle to stay in office. A lot of people forget that he was basically out, and then when all this went down, October 6th happened, then suddenly he was back in, and I know on the back end, a lot of people wonder if he didn't know about it and let it happen, or, may have been involved, which is just all speculative stuff. I'm not trying to start any fights with anybody here of that by any means, but, my wife is on TikTok, and she was really worried that it was going to go away, because she's like, you don't understand. And now she shows me a lot of stuff, which is a lot of it's eye-opening, and thankfully she hasn't shown me anything from Gaza, because I don't think I'd want to see it. The pictures I see in the paper are hard enough to swallow. But she's like, there's things here that are nowhere else. And she felt like a lot of the reason that they were trying to shut TikTok down was for that reason, because there was a little too much truth to be seen. Now, there's probably a bunch of hullabaloo also. But when you see direct videos of things, of course, now with AI, you just don't know what's real anymore. But when you see things happening and there's someone there videoing with their phone and they just happen to be somewhere where something big happens, and then you don't see it in the news at all, that's kind of weird. And I could see where the impetus would be to get rid of something like that if you're a government, because that way it's easier to hide stuff.
Well, I think that that's very much the truth. I think that, first of all, I was never for this idea that we're going to get rid of TikTok because of China. You start going that route, you just become China, right? I'm not saying that it shouldn't be exactly. It shouldn't be regulated in some sense. But like you said, what seemed to be the problem is that these were counter narratives to the great narrative that were being sold on a daily basis. And that's why we can't have censorship. We can't have algorithms in which there's no accountability whatsoever. I do still fear that this idea that these companies cannot be essentially sued for their behavior, that they're not, they're not editors. They are. Again, they ban content all the time. We saw what happened with YouTube, Facebook, X. To some extent, a lot of it still is happening. I think that the noose has actually loosened quite a bit, like we've discussed before. It's been a few weeks now. I'm actually monetized again. I am seeing things in my feed that I wasn't seeing before, but who knows what the next subject matter is that we're not going to be able to talk about. So I don't like the government getting involved in any of that, threatening to take down a popular social media platform or ban it in the United States if somebody, in particular doesn't own it. Very dangerous stuff, in my opinion, Aaron.
I agree.
It makes me think of with the way social media is now, or instant news feeds, and you read articles about World War II and certain things that our government held back, whether it was failures or glitches in the war, where if people in the United States would have seen Iwo Jima or the Normandy invasion or any of these great sacrifices of life, how much support they would have had for sustained World War II. How?
Sure.
It's...
Well, that's why Vietnam was what it was, because that was the first war on TV.
Right.
When you grew up with the war on TV.
It was on the news every night. Every night they had a body count.
Yeah.
Viet Cong Americans. Every night.
Body count.
Body count. How many died that day? How many died that day? What happened? Crazy.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, why? The domino effect was the big reason. And they're all like, you know what? Well, if South Vietnam falls to communism's all over the Asian continent. It's
like it is now.
Like it is now.
Wow.
So, yeah, we didn't learn from the French.
No.
So, anyway, it's the news.
Yeah. Well, and even then, right?
But yeah, we need that guy with a cell phone saying, yeah, even here in our own country, it's like, Floyd up in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
The guy's kneeling on his neck for 6 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and the whole thing is, you just don't know in the media anymore because of the, modernization of the Smith-Munn Act during Obama administration, or it's legal to propagandize news. So you don't know what angle they're coming from, and it's mind-boggling to me when I see a story and it could be either side, because they're both full of it, right? Maybe it's CNN, maybe it's Fox News, or Wall Street Journal, whatever. They'll tell you a story, and then my wife has showed me things on TikTok where like, no, here's a video of it. This person was there. This is what happened. And it's what they're reporting is a completely different thing than what you could see happen. And how that's even legal blows my mind.
Well, it doesn't seem like there has been any type of criminal accountability in the sense of the media whatsoever. I don't even know that there's been the type of civil accountability that should be with the mainstream media. Tucker Carlson is often referenced in a court case with Fox News, and so is Alex Jones, about quote-unquote performance artist or being a commentator, and what they say doesn't have to be the truth, et cetera, et cetera. I think a lot of that is legalese, but when you see it being presented in court, it kind of gives you the mindset of where these folks are coming from, and I think that always kind of needs to be in the back of people's mind. We're talking about media figures and who we believed. It just came out, I think, a couple weeks ago when new flight logs were published via the House Oversight Committee in the Epstein case. At 91 years old, good old Walter Cronkite went to the island with Epstein and others. So, you wonder even then how compromised the media was when Walter Cronkite, also a Bohemian Grove member, and also, by the way, in that cremation of care ritual, he's the voice. So
Wow.
Well, yeah. So Walter Cronkite, maybe not the best guy, even though he was America's most trusted man.
Exactly. When I was growing, him and Brokaw, not Brokaw, Chet Huntley and David Brinkley.
Yeah.
And
I remember Brinkley in the 80s when he was like so old. He was like 900 years old.
I remember when he's young.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But and to address, some of what we were just talking about with like TikTok and media stuff, TikTok will show you things that are, some truth to what you're really, the story in the media. Well, right now there's rumors on TikTok that Walmart is closing down for fears of looting because of the SNAP benefits ending for 42 million people. Walmart's come out and said absolutely not true. So, TikTok obviously has its own rumor mill.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all of these outlets do. Look, TikTok came up as this app that was really targeted at younger kids that had access to a bunch of music that wasn't going to be copyright infringement, where you do a little dance video, right? And that aspect of it made me want to throw up in my mouth. When I was watching my nieces at like 8, 9 years old with the phone in front of them, doing like a little dance thing, and then watching it, and then not even posting. I'm like, no, we're not doing this. That's enough of this. What is this? But it's certainly evolved. Look, I think that everything, especially platforms, they're tools like a hammer. You can sit there and have the brain rot trash, the 6-7 stuff, or you can utilize it to get a viewpoint across, right? I mean, there's a ton of trash on YouTube, just like there is any other platform, and now because it has morphed into that, believe me, I'm thinking more and more about talking. But I can't be beholden to these social media, apps. I don't want them on my phone. If I'm going to manage them, I'm going to manage them on my PC. And then I just don't want to get obsessed with another algorithm.
I agree. I'm not obsessed with any algorithms. What do you got, Mike?
Well, I just want to swing back for a second if I can.
Okay.
Back to the Masons.
Yeah.
Because like Nate and his father-in-law, there's a lot of guys in commission. I know you clarified about like the good Masons and the bad Masons. Well, there's a lot of Mason groups that are all about charity and doing stuff for charity. And I happen to be a member of the Knights of Columbus, which is a Catholic men's organization.
Yeah.
And
that's on the building right over here.
Right.
And AFC. But then the other one's got the Mason with the ruler and the thingy and the...
Right. And so we do a lot of fundraisers, and it's all for charity. And the Knights, supposedly, and the Masons are supposed to be these mortal enemies, but we aren't,
Right.
It might have been the dark Masons. But right now, the Knights... It was a priest in Connecticut, Father McGivney, who founded the Knights of Columbus, which evolved from like helping out people at the turn of the century when all the men were dying of disease and trying to help out families and stuff. So it's since grown into a huge insurance company, and it's considered a private insurance company. You can't get insurance from them unless you're a member of the Knights of Columbus. But some of these groups and then there'd be something to dive deep into also. They protect the Pope, and you go into the Pope, and you can do whatever you want. I'm not really a practicing Catholic anymore, but
that's how you grew up.
It's how I grew up. So the Knights of Columbus have their dark side too, I think. But to try and focus, I just want people to know that the Masons aren't all skull and crossbones. They do a lot of good.
Right.
Well, let me also say this. Some of those offshoot groups, like the Shriners, for instance, they're heavily
modernization.
Yeah, they're heavily involved in charity, but that's always kind of been a cornerstone of these groups, to be in the public arena. Remember, these are networking organizations. Hell, when I went and saw, who's the lead singer of The Who? Why can't I think of his name?
Pete Townsend?
Yeah, no, Daltrey. Actually, Pete Townsend didn't play with him, but Townsend's brother played with him. But yeah, he did all the Who stuff. They were collecting for the Shriners there. So he's a big Shriner, and it was for children's hospitals and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, no, they certainly do. And like I said, when you're talking about, those general first 3 degrees, a lot of my friends who did join the Masons did so that they would basically have that networking ability. And especially in Europe, the United Kingdom, Britain, it's still very heavy there, that the big boys club with the Masons, and a lot of those people are in the lower level court systems, law enforcement, etc. So in that regard, Masonry is still pretty significant.
Pat Jones just texted me and said the Knights of Columbus have a great pancake breakfast. Now, he's one of the founding members of the Greaser Masons. You got to have a pompadour for a haircut to be in that one. But no, that's interesting. And I think
We have a great
like what you're saying,
too.
yeah, Knights Club. That's more of a modernization, a modern look at what was going on maybe 100 or 150 years ago or whatever, and they've moved to trying to do more good, whether that be to hide the bad or to just change kind of the feel or the flow of what the organization is. Either way, that's where they're at.
Again, when you look at a lot of these things, they are hyper modernized, and they always do have a benevolent shine. And like I said, when we were talking about the community, they do a lot of good. They do things like flood relief and food drives and potluck dinners, et cetera, et cetera. They're very much a part of the community, and that's kind of one of their superpowers, right? Is when you need to reach down into some obscure area, you're able to do it through that network.
Yeah. No, that's I don't know. It's interesting stuff, and it's weird to just think about all that stuff's around us all the time. You just never stop and think about, the elements of it, where it came from, how it came to be what it is now, and I don't know. Good stuff. Interesting stuff. I don't know. I didn't know anything about the Bohemian Grove. I did see the Nixon quote about it, which is pretty hilarious. and it's just, but he still went, though. Even despite the comment that he made, he would still go there. And, I don't know.
Well, because he had to. Another introduction, if you will, politically that was huge there is Eisenhower got brought into the geopolitical arena post World War II, basically to run for president. I like Ike at the Grove. That's where you can be fast tracked into political elitism.
I would hate to know what they make you do for that fast track. But anyway, we have been deep in the weeds. Well, based on Nixon's comment anyway. But we have been deep in the weeds with Jason Bermas here for the last hour. If you're not familiar with Jason, wake up! He's an awesome documentary filmmaker. Several films out. He's got a show on now. Who did you say you got coming on Making Sense of the Madness on your YouTube channel?
We'll see if I do it live on YouTube. I might put it in segments. But David Icke, if you don't know about David Icke, again, he is the originator. If you hear about shape-shifting reptile people, Icke brought that in with, I believe it was The Biggest Secret in 1999. He also followed that up with Children of the Matrix. But he's just got a ton of different work, and he gives some of the most captivating lectures on symbolism, esoteric knowledge, ancient knowledge, secret societies, the nature of reality, and beyond.
So something, if folks want to go even deeper into what we've already been talking about, make sure you check out the interview with David Icke on Jason Bermas' show. Sounds like he watched too much of V as a kid to me, but anyway, that's just my opinion. But, buddy, I sure appreciate your time. I know you had a rough week, and we always cherish our hour at the end of the week. Learning more, again, it's a mind-opening experience every Friday from 9 to 10 as we go deep in the weeds with Jason Bermas, brought to you by River City's Reader. And again, check out Loose Change. Check out all of his movies. Check out the YouTube channel. Follow the YouTube channel. We got to get his numbers up there so we can start making some more money. And man, we'll sure look forward to talking to you next Friday.
All right. Happy Halloween, Aaron.
Yes, happy Halloween. You know it's Vanilla Ice's birthday.
Oh, big time. Vanilla Ice has a new music video out with Adam Sandler. Might want to go check that out.
I just might.
You might.
All right, brother.
All right,
Thanks,
later on. Bye.
Have a good one, man. See you.
And that is going to do it. You know the drill, everybody. It is not about left or right. It is always about right and wrong. I absolutely love you guys, and I will see you all on the flip side.